Please welcome back to the stage, Dimitri Fane, Head of TrakCare Strategy and Operations.
Thank you. Good morning again. I'm back for my second round. Now that I'm back officially, let me just say how great it is to be here with all of you. I think that the absolute best part of my job is I get to come here and show you all the really cool stuff our teams are working on. And I absolutely love it. It's the only thing better is going to visit all of you at your sites and see what we've built actually being used to treat patients. So it's an incredible pleasure. Great to be back in Bangkok. And I'd like to take you through a little bit of what we've done recently and are about to do in TrakCare. So Kathleen closed with this quote, talking about leadership, technology, and partnership, which I think are key factors in driving digital transformation. So I wanted to, starting from this point, kind of take the next step and talk about what we're doing in the TrakCare world to address these and to support you on this digital transformation journey. So I thought it was worth starting with what are the strategic investment areas in healthcare for InterSystems. And this is actually at a level above TrakCare. This is the entire healthcare portfolio. And we're focusing really in these 5 ways. Everything, the data underpins everything, as we heard from the panel earlier. The TrakCare is built on the Iris for Health data platform, which is the most advanced healthcare data platform in the world, and that gives us an enormous advantage. And there's a lot that we can do with that basis. We then move into sort of analytics and insight, which could be dashboards. Possibly more important in the TrakCare world is decision support. How do you have the data? How do you use the data and get better value out of it? Facilitating innovation is hugely important, and we're going to talk a lot about that today in the TrakCare terms. User experience, of course, is vitally important. And healthcare in the cloud is a major investment area for us. So the healthcare industry around the world has really embraced cloud technology. We've doubled down on that investment, and we're building capacity in terms of cloud services, cloud operations, our ability to offer services in the cloud. TrakCare, for example, you may be interested in knowing, is one of the only global EHRs that's capable of running fully cloud native and elastic. We think that's going to become important in the future. So that's, again, an area of investment. Moving on to the TrakCare world. So if you've heard me speak anytime in the last couple of years, you've heard me talk a lot about the amount of change we're all facing as an industry. So every month, every quarter, every year, the business environment around you is changing, the healthcare is changing, technology is certainly changing. We saw this in COVID, the sort of mass disruption of everything we're doing. We've seen it more recently with generative AI. So we really think of TrakCare as being built for this changing healthcare world. We think a lot in our roadmap planning about what can we do with the TrakCare product to make it easier for you to adjust to these ever-changing pressures on your business. The answer we come up with is these 3 pillars of agility and resilience. So these are, from a TrakCare roadmap strategy planning point of view, these are the 3 areas that we're looking to invest in. So user experience, as I mentioned before, is all important. There's endless research on clinician burnout. There's some phenomenal research from KLAS, who you'll hear from a little bit later, about the link between clinical adoption and user satisfaction, which I think is really key. So in order to get value out of these systems, you need deep, deep clinical adoption. And in order to get that deep adoption, you need an outstanding user experience. So user experience leads the way, and I'm going to be spending most of the time today showing you some user experience enhancements, because without the appropriate user experience, you don't get the change management. You wind up in that situation that Kathleen showed of you're starting your transformation journey and it just trails off. Interoperability is a key strength of InterSystems. Again, running on the Iris platform allows us to do things that our competitors can't, allows you to do things with your data that others can't. It's an ongoing and significant area of investment, and we'll be talking a bit more about that in detail. And innovation to me really means 2 separate but related things. It's our ability to be innovative in our product design and our product development, using all of these new technologies to innovate what we're doing in TrakCare. But equally important is your ability as a user of TrakCare to use your data and innovate with your data. As Kathleen said, we're again, I think we're a little bit different from some of our competitors in the sense that we absolutely take the view that it's your data, it's actually the patient's data, if we're being very, very honest here, but it's certainly not ours. And we don't meter access to it. We don't intend to charge for API access. We're probably the most open and interoperable EHR on the planet, actually, and we'd like to double down on that and get even better. So just, some of you haven't seen TrakCare before, most of you have. It's a unified healthcare information system. We focus around a number of care settings, and we think of ourselves as patient-centric and user-focused. So again, user experience, but it's always around the patient. I wanted to say a couple of words about this accessible box. So I think most of us, when we read the term accessible, we immediately think of WCAG compliance and the ability for users of different abilities to use the system, and all of that's true. We've built all of that into the browser experience. But the other thing about TrakCare is it's a native browser application. There's nothing to install on the clients, and the responsive user interface works across everything from a mobile phone to a large monitor on the wall. And so it's accessible wherever you have an internet connection that can get you to the TrakCare server. So it's a different kind of accessibility, but I think it's worth mentioning. I think something else that sets TrakCare apart is our global footprint. So TrakCare is not the largest EHR in the world, but I'm pretty sure we have the broadest global footprint. So this slide used to say 28 countries. We've recently signed a deal in Peru, so it now says 29 countries. You can see South America starting to fill in nicely. This gives us a unique perspective on the market. So we've got a lot of hospitals, an enormous number of patient records under our management, and this incredibly broad geographic spread. We build a single global product, and that's released with a set of regional editions or regional versions of the product that have content and configuration that's appropriate for the local market. Some of that's about statutory legislative things, some of that's about clinical traditions that are different in different countries. There's a variety of things that we build out at the local level. The point is it's all based around the core set of common code global product, which learns from that incredible variety of geographies. And that's, again, one of the things that I really love about working with TrakCare and working with InterSystems is that every single day you get to talk to a different country, you get to learn something about how healthcare is practiced in different regions, and how even how the revenue cycle and the statutory stuff works. It's always fascinating. So what I thought I'd do for the rest of today is I'm going to step through each of these three pillars of agility and resilience and give you some proof points. I'm going to show you some examples of what we've done in these areas in the last year or so that you may not have seen before. In fact, everything I'm showing you today is available now. So this is your roadmap, not my roadmap. So I think it's always with enterprise software, you're always a few months to a year or two behind where we are in the end of our development. I always feel like it's less useful to you to know what I'm doing 2 years from now, but knowing what I've done in the last 6 months to the year is very, very important because this is all available to you now. Right, so a number of years ago, we embarked on a project to revolutionize user experience. The first thing we realized was that the user interface, which is different from the user experience, was not up to the task. So we embarked on this multi-year program to rebuild the user interface as the first step to then be able to go back through the product and really dig deeply into user experience. So our clinical documentation and planning areas are the first beneficiaries of this. So the encounter record, the most recent thing that we've done with the encounter record is we've pulled the old flow sheets into it. So you can see the graphical representation of data down at the bottom right of the screen, and the clinical timeline up at the top. So you'll see in general TrakCare becoming more and more graphical, and we hope intuitive. But the encounter record becomes really a one-stop area for clinical documentation and for care planning, where we've built this in lots and lots of consultation with lots of clients, and we're quite proud of it. So the encounter record is the starting point. We then move into specialty functional area, and the most recent project that we've just completed in the last couple of releases is the nursing care plans. So we've completely redesigned nursing care plans. What you see here is the tool to apply a care plan to a patient. So these care plans can be built by the hospital themselves. We also have the ability to import things from Elsevier and other providers of care plan data, and it's all based around problems and goals and interventions. The nursing care plans also has a care plan management tool, which if you're familiar with the nursing task list, it looks very similar to the nursing task list. So once the interventions from the care plan are assigned to your patient's episode, the care plan tool is now available to you to track and measure these actions. And these, you can go from these links into the administration screen to record whichever the action is that you're doing. Also, in the last year or two, we've completely redesigned medication reconciliation. Just moving to the other side of the stage a little bit because I was getting bored over there. You'll find that MedRec is, it's available at admission, it's discharge, it's transfers of care. Many of you are clinicians, and I don't need to tell you how important medicines reconciliation is in the provision of care. But what you see here is a very intuitive interface. This is a pharmacist doing the MedRec, and you can, I don't know if you can read them exactly, but you'll see icons for continue and to stop and withhold, and you can go from straight here to the order screen to change the medication. Again, available in the current product with mobile UI, and I think very intuitive and an excellent user experience. So this is a little bit different. I wanted to share this in user experience because I think one of the big challenges we all have is driving adoption. So we release TrakCare every 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks there's a new release that brings some new functionality, and this builds over time. It's difficult sometimes to change management and adoption of new functionality can be difficult. What we've done is we've introduced this embedded online help. So you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a question mark that can be made available on screens. Behind that is some information that we ship globally, some information that's added by our regional teams, and as an individual hospital, you can override that and put your own content in there. So you can imagine links to your intranet, you can imagine video content, you can imagine process documentation, whatever you need to show the user. And this, in this particular case, this is just some basic information about this screen. So this is not really a functional enhancement, but it's something that we think is going to help you drive adoption and help you get over that curve. And so I think it's going to become increasingly important. The technology is available today. Some of the content is available today. We're working on shoring up the global content, but I think in the end, actually, it's the client-specific content that's most important, the links to your own configuration and your system. So we've talked a lot about user experience for clinicians, and we'll talk just a few minutes now about the patients. So Personal Community is TrakCare's digital front door platform. And I use the word platform very intentionally. We recognize that not every customer wants everything that we offer in Personal Community. Many of you have your own mobile apps that you've built for, linked to your CRMs and marketing. You may even have an external portal. So we have the Personal Community can operate as a full-fledged digital front door, but it can also be thought of as a set of services. So we have clients, for example, that use only the patient authentication service. So you may want to use OAuth 2 to link an individual patient or citizen to a record in TrakCare. You can do that with Personal Community's patient authentication service. You may wish to share clinical data. So we can use our clinical data service to share just the clinical data. We think it works best if you take everything, of course, and we'd love for you to take everything, but this digital front door area is an area of the market that's changing rapidly, and we recognize that we can't be all things to all people. So we've also built this in a very flexible API-driven way. Got a couple of more things to show you from Personal Community. So we've really enhanced the patient authentication service. What you see on the left here is an example where we're actually tying into a national identification system. We've embedded Microsoft Teams for Teams meetings. It's flexible, so if you use a different telehealth technology, that can be embedded as well. We've embedded the ability for patients to pay. So this can be integrated with a third party, something like Square or WeChat in China. You can integrate and have the patients pay their bills directly from Personal Community. And finally, the most recent enhancement, which I'm really excited about, is the ability for patients to fill out forms. And I'm going to show you a little bit more of that later as an example of interoperability. But what you can see here is a pre-admission form in Personal Community that can be inserted directly into the TrakCare record. Again, the ability to share content. The Personal Community has had its own user interface redesign to make it much more modern, and we think it looks great. In terms of investment, we reorganized ourselves a couple of years ago, so I now have a product manager on my team whose only job is patient experience, and she's responsible for Personal Community, but also Digital Front Door more generally. So moving on to interoperability, there's just a couple of things to show you here from an interoperability point of view. So we are passionate believers in FHIR. FHIR, we believe, is absolutely the future of interoperability. We'll be talking about FHIR a number of times later today. What TrakCare is able to do is it inherits the IRIS FHIR repository capability. And we've recently built screens in TrakCare so that you can FHIR enable your TrakCare environment with a couple of clicks. So you can actually generate the interoperability processes that send your data to the IRIS FHIR repository, and then you can use all of the IRIS capabilities to share with the outside world. We've had some really good success with things like patient record sharing with the Apple Health app, where they offer it. There's a patient app from an organization called the Commons Project, which makes the equivalent for Android. We've certified against both Apple Health and Commons Project, again, using basic OAuth 2 authentication in the IRIS FHIR repository. We've really worked to make it easier to use FHIR with TrakCare if you're running one of the more recent versions. Having said that, we also recognize that FHIR can't do everything. It probably won't ever do anything. It certainly can't do everything today. So we've also made a very, very large investment in our REST APIs. So we've always had a full set of web service APIs that are quite low level. We now have a full suite of REST APIs, and we've implemented the Swagger protocol. So if you're not a technical person, you probably don't know what Swagger is. It's an open source protocol to make APIs self-describing. So what you see over here is the output of Swagger, actually. It's built into TrakCare. So from my point of view, this is great because it means I don't have to worry about maintaining API documentation anymore. Your developers can point a Swagger-enabled API client at a TrakCare environment and get a full listing of all available REST APIs. And that's going to continue to evolve. But that automatic documentation, we hope, will make interoperability radically easier for you. So I mentioned a little bit about the questionnaire ability in Personal Community. So I want to show this to you today, not so much from a Personal Community point of view, but as an example of how these REST APIs are valuable. So what I have here is a simple questionnaire in TrakCare. So you'll see that I'm navigating to a questionnaire, and just to show you that there's no data in there. We've built this using Google Forms, actually, and I'm not necessarily suggesting you're going to use Google Forms, but it just as an example of what you can do with the API. So there's a Python script behind this that it's going to call into TrakCare, get the questionnaire definition, call into Google's API, create a Google form, and then email the patient. So you'll see that kicking off. I can't even read this, and I'm very close, so you definitely can't read it, even though my eyes may not be the best. So what it's done is it's triggered the email from Google. There's the form with a link. And we've just dynamically generated a Google form based on a TrakCare questionnaire. We're going to check cough, sore throat, and describe any other symptoms. We're going to answer chills and dehydration. So this Python script in the background is hanging there waiting for Google to come back to it. So we'll jump back into the Python script, and you'll see it's going to wake up in a moment. Waiting for a response, it says, it's got the response. There it is inserting the data into TrakCare. And coming back to the prompt, we'll go back into TrakCare. And there it is, cough, sore throat, chills, and dehydration. So again, I'm not showing this to you because I think you want to use Google Forms. Maybe some of you do. Maybe you've got a patient portal already. I'm showing this to you as an example of the power of these REST APIs. So this is something that 2 months ago would have been quite difficult. With the most recent release, and we've added the API for questionnaires, this becomes quite easy. So we're using this ourselves in Personal Community. I showed you the screenshot of Personal Community filling out a questionnaire, but you're welcome to use this yourselves. There's, of course, a lot of considerations about medico-legal things of what do you want patients putting into the medical record, but for things like, pre-appointment questionnaires, I think it can be a very powerful thing. You're probably all like me, where it drives me absolutely crazy to show up at a doctor where I've already filled out a form online and they give you the paper form and you've got to give them the same information again, and then you get into the exam room and they ask you the same questions. And it's absolutely maddening from a patient experience point of view. I think as a community, the more we can do to smooth that out, these little moments of, it's difficult enough being a patient in a healthcare scenario, these moments of delight where, oh, that form I filled in online, the doctor has it on their screen. That's, in other industries that would seem normal. In healthcare, that would be a very big deal, I think, and it's something that we should all be aspiring to. So one of the other things we've done recently is we've launched this partner directory. So this is just www.partner.intersystems.com. This is an emerging area for us. There's not a massive number of partners in there, but this is a curated list of third parties that we know to work well with Iris, with HealthShare, and with TrakCare. And you can filter on the left-hand side by what technology you're interested in, and if you click on any of those tiles, you get more information. So again, Kathleen mentioned earlier that we recognize that we can't solve every problem for every customer as much as we'd love to. It's a big, wide world out there. There's an incredible amount of innovation happening, and we'd love to support that. So if any of you here are from third-party partners and you're not listed here, let me know. We're happy to get you listed. If you're working with somebody who you think should be listed, again, let me know. But we're hoping that this grows into a resource that adds additional value to TrakCare. So lastly, innovation. I talked a little bit earlier about the notion of TrakCare being innovative and TrakCare enabling you to drive innovation in your organization. So a couple of years ago, we released something called the Innovation Toolkit. So the Innovation Toolkit is a Docker container that you can download into your environment. With a couple of clicks, you connect it to TrakCare, and it makes the power of FHIR available very easily to allow you to take your data and to start innovating. So in the last year, we've actually moved all of that code into TrakCare, and we've renamed it. So you'll notice it's now called the Innovation Framework, because there's no longer a need to download that Docker container. All of the code you need is inside TrakCare. And again, this is, there's a lot of innovation studies that show that you've got to try 1,000 things before you find the one thing that's great, or 10,000, whatever the number is. So what we're trying to do here is lower the cost of entry. So you have your data, you want to try something, you want to build a smart on FHIR app, you want to send data to a machine learning system and build some algorithms. I don't want TrakCare to be in your way. It's your data. We make it very, very easy to get access to the data. So I'll give you an example of what this looks like. I've got just a medication chart from inside TrakCare. It's a little blurry on the screen, but that's a fluorouracil prescription. You can see it says 500 milligrams injection, intravenous, push only. It's the order line. So what does this look like from a FHIR point of view? So using the TrakCare framework, we can pull out, this is just a JSON representation of the FHIR bundle. If it weren't so blurry, you'll have to believe me here, you could see that order line. And this is obviously machine readable because it's JSON, but it's also human readable, and it's intuitive and obvious. And I think it's a really good example for those of you who are not as technical. of the power of this. So, in the past, it would have taken a developer, a day or two writing SQL, trying different things, trying to understand the data model, which is quite complex and sophisticated. Whereas FHIR being an open standard, give me the medication line from this patient as a FHIR representation, here you go. And you can see how quickly and easily now you can take that and use it for whatever purposes. So we've used this to send data in bulk to machine learning systems to build algorithms. We've seen customers use this to build smart on FHIR apps. We've seen it for all of the system-to-system interoperability. There's there's a lot you can do in this area, and if your organization isn't going all in on FHIR like we are, I'd highly recommend that you do. It's your technical teams, your informatics teams really should be learning about FHIR. It's something that's going to drive a lot of innovation in the future. So just a couple of observations to kind of bring it all together. We talked about these three pillars, and they all interact with each other, and they all come together. You've already seen the TrakCare Assistant this morning. I was originally going to show it to you now, but I won't. But that's an example, I think, where we bring all of these threads together. We think of TrakCare as being built for artificial intelligence. And let me just talk you through this slide, because I think it's important. So there's generative AI. There's more traditional machine learning, where you build a decision support algorithm based on historical data. There's all these exciting and innovative things that's happening. We're doing some of them. We've got partners. Major universities are doing them. TrakCare we think of as being uniquely suited to interacting with these things and building this world of machine learning and artificial intelligence. So we make it very easy to get the data out, which is the top line. There's a variety of things happening. Some of these are powered by InterSystems, some of these are powered by Google or somebody else. And the really critical thing for me is this bottom line, is bringing the information back into the clinician's workflow. So I've seen a lot of situations where you build an algorithm or do some machine learning, and you wind up with two systems. So if you want to see the risk scores from the machine learning, you go into this system, everything else is in TrakCare. TrakCare has this incredible flexibility and this ability to take things in as observation items. You can treat them as lab results. Observation items are very good for things like risk scoring, because then you can use TrakCare's visual rules to create alerts. You can graph them, you can put them on EPR charts. They become actionable data inside the EHR rather than just something that sits off to the side. CDS hooks is available. Many of these systems, CDS hooks is a standard format for providing information that gets inserted into EHRs. So we can support that as well if there's more information. Even something as simple as an icon that has some logic behind it that turns color or changes based on a scoring. I think we'd love to engage with you on a local level here, your regional TrakCare teams. If you're in a situation like this where you're building value outside of the system, we're really passionate about building a consolidated experience for the end users to make the user experience excellent and give them the information they need at the point of care. So we'd be very interested in talking to you about ways in which you can incorporate this right into your TrakCare system. So the Smart Assistant that I showed you earlier, so that's in its current release. We think it's pretty great, and I'm happy to hear that you guys thought it was great as well. Similar to Personal Community, we're also thinking of this as a framework. This becomes the entry point to call out into a lot of these third-party systems. So the first example of that is the generative AI that we showed you, but we believe there's other examples as well. So whereas today in the current release, you can use the assistant to navigate to specific parts of the chart, you ought to then be able to ask a question. So, patient name, AI score, or whatever word you describe to that, it then becomes a natural jumping off point to jump out to whether it's an InterSystems or third-party decision support tool, and bring that information back in. If there were a third party out there that makes specialty displays of data for specific specialties, the very, very deep specialty content, we think the TrakCare Assistant could be a good launching point for that. To show me what's interesting about this patient as a cardiologist. There's systems out there that are built by cardiologists that layer onto the content that we have. And again, recognizing we can't do everything. We see the TrakCare Assistant as a user experience accelerator today, but also as a framework for future innovation, which is why I want to mention it in both parts of the presentation. So that said, comes to the end of our time together today. So I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. I'll be here the rest of the day. I really look forward to speaking to you. My contact information's in that QR code. You're welcome to scan it and look me up. And thank you very much for your attention.